they have to pay a heavier price because their ability to withstand sanctions is much less than our ability, and therefore they will be affected very seriously. But also beyond a particular point, the Americans cannot allow Pakistan to collapse.
The sanctions on Pakistan will hit the economy much more than they will hit Indian economy, because we can absorb it. And our, if you look at the total assistance we get from abroad, it's only a very small fraction of the GDP. But Pakistan will not be able to bear it much longer.
The fact that India's nuclear program is far ahead of Pakistan's is acknowledged all over the world. But security experts feel that the question is, how will India be able to counter the threat posed by a nuclear Pakistan? And whether this will unleash a spiraling nuclear arms race in the South Asian region.
What have these two countries done? They have carried out tests in the last couple of weeks. They have tested a couple of missiles. And with this capability, they are trying to assuage their insecurity. There is a China factor also for both India and Pakistan. So I think this arms race is something that the phrase itself needs to be used a little more carefully, because I think the context must be recognized.
Pakistan has had nuclear weapons for the last 11 years. And they, at least in their view, India has had nuclear weapons for the last 8 years. There was no arms race. And therefore, this is just because the Americans had an arms race with the Russians. The Americans tell everybody else, everybody should be having an arms race because we had one.
Skeptics ask that if nuclear weapons cannot be used given their lethal ability for total annihilation, how would induction of nuclear weapons give the country any long-lasting security comfort?
Because you have the capability, the chances are that it's less likely that threat will arise. You see, if you're unarmed, then you can be bullied more easily. But if you're armed, then it's not easy to bully you. And the nuclear business is a lot more about bullying and blackmail, coercion, than of fighting a war.
Moreover, the age-old debate of butter versus guns is now being raised. The reality is that if India is to induct nuclear weapons into its defense force, it must pay a price. Experts toed the bill to between 15,000 crore rupees and 20,000 crore rupees, spread over a number of years. It is expected that defense costs will increase by 15% annually. The question is, where will these funds come from, and is this expense justified?
What is the level of expenditure that we have so far indulged in? Not more than 2.2% of the GDP. The average worldwide is 4%. China expends over 6%. Pakistan over 5%. What are we talking about?
While a diplomatic initiative has been launched by India to present its view to the international community, there is already debate whether India will be signing the CTBT or the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty soon, and if so, on what terms?
No, I don't think India is going to be in a hurry to sign the CTBT, although it has indicated that it is willing to do so, and it is willing to examine some of the provisions within the CTBT. And one of the provisions within the CTBT that India is objecting to is the testing in laboratories and simulations and what they call subcritical tests, which are basically to hone the sophistication of the nuclear devices, which the 5 nuclear weapon states are continuing with.
India's argument that both NPT and CTBT are inherently discriminatory is being appreciated in many world quarters. The Indian position states that while an exclusive club have nuclear weapons which they are refusing to disband, they cannot tell other sovereign nations not to possess nuclear weapons or conduct tests. Both CTBT and NPT does not require the nuclear powers to dismantle their arsenals.
If these 5 weapon states are against nuclear weapons, then why do they not disarm and destroy their own nuclear arsenals? India is not demanding that they do it overnight. India is asking them for a time frame within which to do it, and that is the time frame that they are not willing to give, because they are not willing to disarm their nuclear arsenals or disband their nuclear arsenals.
Analysts feel that one of the long-term benefits of India's nuclear tests will be that these tests have once again raised the crucial question of total global nuclear disarmament, a subject which has been kept in the international back burners for some period of time.
India's demand for disarmament now will carry more credibility, because there are countries who like to see India disarming and will recognize now that India will disarm only if China disarms, China will disarm only if Russia and the United States disarm. So there's a fear here that what they were trying to build up in the last 7 years or 8 years, the non-proliferation structure, that is challenged, at least if not threatened.
The widespread euphoria which followed the nuclear tests in India are proof that the country's nuclear option is mandated by vast sections of the population. The Pakistani tests, in turn, vindicates and validates India's nuclear strategy.
It's all right for the government to claim that we had some idea that this is what was going to happen and therefore we preempted them by being proactive and going ahead. I think we should stop justifying and rationalizing our nuclear program in terms of Pakistan. Pakistan is a small country of fairly little consequence. I think we should grow up, because there are larger dangers looming in front of India, and Pakistan is a very minor danger.
With the South Asian region now becoming a nuclear weapons zone, Indian Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee has called for talks with its neighbors to ratify no first use of the weapons. It is imperative that the world community also take cognizance of the emerging reality in South Asia. It will be to think that India would roll back its nuclear capability as long as the threat perception to its security remains. Critics feel that the only way the intimidation of nuclear weapons can be raised is by engaging in a holistic program, a program which is time-bound, which includes constructive dialogue and participation of all nuclear-possessing states.